interrupt our regularly scheduled programming for a Channel 3 special report.
Supply chain disruption and toilet paper shortages have become the new norm as the outbreak of an unprecedented, unidentified contagion continues to spread worldwide.
But how is one supposed to procure necessities like champers and caviar now?
Really? Did you not see the bit about the loo roll?
But who cares? Hello? Tiny arms, darling. Very tiny arms.
Okay, but how do you, You know what? Never mind. I don't want to know. Stupid question.
And we're told that most of the injuries are bites, not gunshot or stab wounds, as we were led to believe earlier.
Oh, blast. I better call my agent. Do hope the next Jurassic Park movie is not delayed.
Right, well, I better get to Trader Joe's before the hipsters clean the whole place out.
Trader who, darling? Sounds frightfully common.
Come get some.
If I'm not back in a few days, send for help.
What's in it for moi?
My Cartier Santos you keep borrowing. If you help me, it's yours.
Done deal. Oh, goody. Oh, and break a leg, old sport. Don't forget the caviar.
You got it.
This is a minor, containable situation.
The people it kills get up and kill.
Well, how are people supposed to protect themselves, Doctor?
Things are out of control down below.
This is the most contagious disease I've ever seen.
The subject will respond with immediate homicidal aggression.
The Casio G-Shock G-9000 is an overlooked watch these days, but among G-Shock enthusiasts and horologists in the know, it holds a truly legendary status, and for very good reasons. Beyond its historic and technically innovative importance, it also outperforms not only every other G-Shock the brand offers under $500, but almost all the toughest watches throughout the world. In fact, the G-9000 for nearly 2 decades held the title of the toughest watch of all time, until 2019 when it was succeeded by the new Mudmaster, which we will discuss later. So how is this achieved for so little cost? I only spent $70 on mine. And what exactly makes it tougher compared to all the other G-Shocks? Well, when you absolutely positively
got to kill every mother in the room, except no substitutes.
Okay, hi guys, and welcome to hopefully not the last show at the end of the world. We're talking about the G-Shock. I'll do a quick wristwatch check wearing my Captain Willard that I purchased from Moyer Fine Jewelers. Shout out to them. They're an authorized dealer for Seiko, Grand Seiko, and so many other prestigious brands. And I am still wearing it on the waffle. It's the olive one, rubber strap, FKM, very high quality, except no substitute, from Wrist Candy Watch Club. As we have discussed in so much detail G-Shock's massive horological historic significance, we will skip the usual part of that story, but it's fair to say it's a true icon. The Mudman represents a crucial turning point for the brand, and its history can be traced all the way back to the second great generation of G-Shock, the G-Shock 2 of 1985. From there, it would shed its brutalist retro aesthetic and evolve into a more circular and quintessentially 90s design with the DW8400 in 1995, before becoming very much its own thing, finally, with an amalgamation of all the previous versions with today's G-9000, which was introduced in 2006. G-Shock decided to embrace the nickname Mudman that the original had gained among fans, and so the mole mascot was chosen and given to the DW8400 and remains a tradition to this very day. As most of you know by now, G-Shock have earned the distinction of being among only a handful of watches certified for space missions by NASA. They have broken world records, like having a 24.9-ton truck driven over them, and officially issued to militaries all over the world. All things, I might add, that this G-9000 can also handle with ease. But what exactly makes this tougher than all other watches? Well, it's got to do with those two simple words printed on the resin strap. But what does the specialized resistance of mud actually mean? Aren't all G-Shock watches protected from mud if they are water resistant to 200 meters? Well, not really. Unlike water resistance, mud, or the buildup of any dirt, sand, dust, dried up oils, chemicals, or zombie guts for that matter, can eventually get in the way of it operating effectively in the field. This requires disassembly and cleaning periodically. What G-Shocks with mud resistant have that others don't is that the buttons are protected by a guard structure that are sealed to prevent intrusion of any debris. During the era of the first mud-resistant Mudman in the 80s, most other G-Shock watches had very small buttons, and typically the harsh environments they were worn in required the wearer to have gloves on. And so the buttons were also enlarged for ergonomic tactical efficiency, not just for mud resistance, but to increase the surface area, and also, as we see here, for improved grip with knurling.
Here is a Steyr AUG. Steyr AUG's a bad mother. Listen. My customers don't know about it, so there ain't no demand for it.
So in terms of materials, there's not really much difference here. A little bit more steel involved, as you see there. So you got your plastic resin, you do get a solid stainless steel buckle, and of course the steel case back, which we'll discuss in just a moment. In terms of the size, well, it's, I would say, around the same size, or wears very similar to your typical G-Shock squared. This is my total recall that I've done a whole video on. There is a slight increase to the lug-to-lug measurement, so it does wear a little bit larger. It's not the most ideal for small wrists, although it does wear very, very well on all kinds of wrists. What's interesting about the pushers is you got rectangle on the left and then of course circular on the right, and you instinctively know what side is what. Quite clever little nifty bit of design there. And then unlike the G-Shock Square, you got a fifth pusher at the front for your dual illumination, which is really great. It's very responsive. You got your auto illuminator as well, so you angle it and it comes on. You can choose between 3 or 5 seconds. Afterglow, and of course flash alert, all very, very handy indeed. Another really interesting point is the mud resistance not only refers to the pushers, but the other place where stuff can get in, debris, is of course the case back. Notice how the screws go through the back, the whole back section screws down on to the steel case back. If I show you on your typical G-Shock, you don't have that. It just screws in on the back, and then you have your little gasket and your plastic holder there to hold things in. So this gives even more resistance to anything possibly getting in there and upsetting the gasket. Yeah, I've never really noticed that before, but very cool indeed. Also, if we bring back the G-Shock Square, look how deep the screen is. This raised section here gives extra protection. So once again, this is more exposed. On my old G-Shock, which is now retired, I've used for almost 10 years, was my daily beater, but then I've decided to upgrade for some new features. I added bull bars, so this is almost acts as like a more natural protection. They thought of everything, every single thing they can make this tougher within that lower budget. They've done that. One of my favorite features, you can set it to have a 5-second countdown, and it's audible before it starts the timer, which is very handy if you're doing a race, ready, set, go, boom, it goes. You can do auto repeat. Again, very useful for working out, general timing coordination. And it goes without saying, this is ISO rated, like all G-Shocks. It's capable of professional diving up to 200 meters. Actually, for diving, these buttons are even more practical because red is the most visible color underwater. And of course, it's so huge as a diver, absolutely spot on, unbeatable. The G-9000 was actually originally designed for rally drivers and motorcycle racing. And that's why the mole in the back has little wheels instead of legs, unlike the predecessors. And Casio chose the 3031 module, which I think is one of the most underrated modules. You don't see it that often. It's a real shame because I think it's one of their best. I adore the nifty way you can use two stopwatches with 60-minute indicators for each, one on top for stopwatch 1 and the other at the bottom for stopwatch 2, in real time while scrolling through and utilizing the watch's other functions. This is incredibly practical for sports, diving, navigational or survival timing, but ultimately militarily, being able to separate the timing of different elements during, let's say, a coordinated attack or maneuver. Absolutely invaluable. For civilian use, this translates to exercise, or let's say the cooking of different components for a meal. And recently I had to take various medications due to being unwell, and this watch has no less than 5 alarms. Super handy for reminding oneself of things, if you're like me and just can't remember jack. The framed seconds indicator on the left shows milliseconds in stopwatch mode, and then measures 20-second intervals in normal timekeeping. A very effective way to instantly see split seconds, again in real time. If that wasn't enough, the cherry on top is it also comes with a world time complication, 29 time zones and 48 cities to be exact. And if it's one thing we've learned from the great General Schwarzkopf, who famously wore 2 watches, one for local time where deployed, and the other for Pentagon time, obviously coordinating with HQ, in modern international warfare is an absolute necessity. But for us civvies, it's just as ideal for travelling, or if like me and you have business interests or families overseas and need to coordinate Zoom calls, it becomes something of a necessity. So inadvertently, G-Shock essentially had created the ultimate field watch. So much so, it laid the foundations of many more professionally aimed G-Shocks with the subsequent Master of G series. This watch would be the progenitor to the Rangeman, Frogman, Gravity Master, and the highly upgraded multi-sensor Mudmasters of today. I saw and a shout out to Watches Checked, this channel I came across randomly. He actually recorded, and I'll put a clip here, he actually froze his Mudman in ice. I think he put it in boiling water or something crazy like that. Now, these conditions, you're not going to survive, but the watch will. You can't see a smartwatch doing any of that. The Mudman concept certainly is more resistant temperature-wise than your regular G-Shock. Ultimately and poetically, it would go full circle, as the Mudman's reign as the toughest watch in the world would end by being usurped by its own descendants, the first generation of Mudmaster in 2015. In the last few years, the current crowned new king is the newest carbon core-based Ani-Digi models, that in another fitting twist to the story, were chosen as the official partner by the British MOD. The first mud-resistant equipped G-Shock, the DW5500, was made famous by being perfectly cast for Arnie's wrist in the 1987 schlockfest and dystopian near future of The Running Man, a time when the martial aggressiveness of Erno Goldfinger, Paul Rudolph, Denis Lasden, Marcel Breuer and so on, with their 1970s brutalism, was being retrofitted by a neon-coloured, spandex-clad, more vibrant, Reaganomic-fueled 1980s idea of the future.
It's a game between life and death.
The 80s was still very much overshadowed, like a persistent bad hangover, by the grimy, lived-in geometric angular harshness of the 1970s, like a cigarette-stained carpet from The Shining. Look at any sci-fi movie from those decades and you will see exactly what I mean. The genesis of the G-9000, however, was during that late 1990s period. The Soviet Empire was defeated, the computing information age was coming at us at maximum warp speed, and with renewed confidence came a less austere, less bombastic relaxation to the shapes. We see the partially exposed steel endoskeleton of the inner protective core, along with the typefaces on the front and layout being reminiscent of an Enterprise control panel from TNG. Nowhere else is the 90s sci-fi style encapsulated better than Verhoeven's square-jawed techno-fascist Saved by the Bell in space aesthetic of the multi-layered and deceptively sophisticated satire Starship Troopers.
I'm doing my part too.
They're doing their part. Are you? Join the mobile infantry and save the world.
With the proliferation of Japanese digital watches as the hottest new-ish of the time, long before the horological abominations we ironically called smartwatches, is it any wonder this optimistic style permeated into the G-Shock's design language too? So the clever chaps at G-Shock, never to miss a trick, would capitalize on the strong military following that the Mudman was gaining by releasing a militaristic themed version, you could say. Less colors, blacked out screen, little stencil markings to proudly display the 3031 module on the strap. And I owned this watch for a very long time. It was one of my favorite, it still is one of my favorite G-Shocks. Well, the first negative is the buttons. You have to get used to these harder to press buttons. When you first get a Mudman, they're really tough. I mean, you need to wear them in. They're like a good pair of chukka boots, but this is deliberately so. Again, you don't want to accidentally actuate or muck up your timing in the field. So this is deliberate. If you want something much easier to press, go with the Casio Mission Impossible. With these are just fantastic to operate. Another negative is if you have the smaller wrist, sometimes when you have it on, you got excess strap, which is kind of annoying. I'm gonna try and fix my NATO strap adapters. Let's see if it's compatible with the G-Shock squares from J&K. Shout out to them if you want to support a veteran-owned business here in the United States. So I'll try that. I'll do a little research. I might dig about on the old Etsy and eBay and see if there's some third-party adapters I can do. I don't think G-Shock do them. And it goes without saying, you still got the strap, the way it juts out, unlike on non-G-Shocks, and this is, you know, any G-Shock enthusiast worth their salt will tell you they're purposely put like this because when it falls, it's more they tend to fall like that and absorb the shock if they're jutting out like this. So it was part of that original design. Another negative is if I bring in this, which I haven't even worn yet. This is a brand new G-Shock, latest generation. It has all the apps and the notifications with your smartphone, blah, blah, blah. It's basically a smartwatch mixed with the G-Shock. I got this for Christmas. I'm going to review it hopefully in a month or two. Very, very impressive bit of kit. And it's only about, what's the retail on this? This is 150, so it's over double the price of this. You got all the latest stuff like health tracking and all the rest of it. This does seem a little bit dated by today's standards, but then again, if you want to stay offline, you don't want to be trackable, especially in a military context. I've had several people comment in the armed forces, and also just for privacy reasons, I want to be off-grid, you know, especially in today's godforsaken Black Mirror connected reality. No one can trace you with this, so I like that. I do like that. You know, it's not the best value anymore. Having said that, when they do discontinue this, if you look at the all the special editions, which they discontinued and did limited amounts, they go for insane money among G-Shock collectors. And I think this will go the same way once it becomes discontinued.
I'd buy that for $1.
The last few years of the 1990s seemed bright, and the future might just turn out less like the nastiness of the cynical Robocop Detroit wasteland and more akin to the squeaky clean goody-goody one in Demolition Man.
Demolition Man, it takes place in a future where society has changed to be more politically correct, more polite. Everything in the future is safe and sanitized for your protection.
The world went, once again, in a darker direction, as it inevitably does, towards the end of 2001. But despite the incoming storm, and aside from setting the bar for robustness, crucially, the 2006 Mudman still clinged on to that 90s confidence and continues to give that hint of nostalgia, and that is what rarely counts. It's this indefinable, ineffable, and irreplaceable quality that makes it fun. The same way I go back to the rudimentary but yet so lovable universe of Command & Conquer over the flashy, convoluted and sensory overload of modern computer games. But beyond the simplistic Proustian Madeleine moments it evokes, just think about the utility of the mud-resistant concept for a second. If you're in some kind of perilous scenario where every second counts, no matter if you're coordinating artillery so you don't get hit by friendly fire, or simply navigational and survival timing. Maybe you are seriously off the beaten track with a countdown for a medvac and your life depends on it. Do you really want to push a malfunction or an accidental actuation? Today, the modern Mudman, or I should say Mudmaster, has become a quasi-luxury gadget with every bell and whistle Casio can stuff into their now tragically over-bloated size. But yet this is the most important Mudman, still relatively affordable and, like a true beta watch, easy to replace and dirt cheap to maintain. The T-1000 of watches, if you will. It might be old, but as the Terminator says,
not obsolete.
The precursor, the godfather of all purpose-built professional G-Shocks. There would not have been a Master of G collection without this watch. It's so important. I mean, it should be in a Hall of Fame, and I still can't think of a tougher watch under $100 than this. Your experiences, your thoughts, all of that good stuff, please, in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, especially if you want to see more free and independent content like this. I will catch you, hopefully, in the next one. Stay safe, guys. Onwards and upwards. Thank you for watching. Ciao.